This is a Taranaki Museum oral history program and is part of the Immigration Project. This is an interview with Mr. Jim Skilling at 1 Kitchener Terrace, New Plymouth. Today is the 13th of 10th, 1993, and we're recording on a Sanyo cassette recorder using an outside mic. The interviewer is Joy Peckham, and this is tape number 1. All right, Jim, first of all, thank you very much for giving up your time instead of doing your stamps on such a nice day, although you'd be inside, wouldn't you? So, Jim, where were you born?
I was born in Darlington in the north of England, in the North Midlands. I was born in 1930. I've got two brothers, they're both younger than me, and no sisters. My father died when I was 12. And I don't have much memory of him. What I do have is that I can remember him sitting on a chair. I would be 7 then, because it was Coronation Day. I can clearly remember that day. He used to sit on a chair a lot, or else hold on to the mantelpiece. He had something wrong with his back. And I believe that was as a result of a war wound, but I've never been really sure. And I can't remember much else about that time, but soon after that, from 1938 to 41, I was in Dr. Bernardo's homes or foster homes, and in that period, I was put into 11 different places, and
why was this, Jim? Was it because your mother couldn't cope?
Couldn't cope. I imagine financially, she just couldn't cope. And I was in a foster home when war broke out. I can clearly remember that day. It was a sunny morning. I was in one then. At that time, I was taught to ride a bike. I can remember the soldiers in the early part of the war. Woodbines, they were 5 for 6pence at that time. Dr. Bernardo's, that was a particularly harsh regime. I have most unpleasant memories of Dr. Bernardo's, and I never talk about it. But there were a few lighter sides. One place where we stayed at was in Thetford Hall in Norfolk, a huge place, but we were only allowed a certain part of it, I imagine. But there are a lot of grounds, acres and acres of trees and grass. But other than that, I can't remember much about it. The two things that stick in my mind are cleaning the floors, because everything was done manually. And the boys used to have to wash the floor. And to polish it, we'd all get on our hands and knees and all be in rows. And we'd gradually be up, just polish it. And I can remember once going to one other place and arriving at lunchtime and they gave me my lunch. And there wasn't a chair, and I was told, well, the food will go down better. Anyway, but those were the sort of lighter things. Dr. Bernardo's didn't do much for me, although I believe in it. I think it's got a place. Then, after that, I moved to a little village in Somerset called Stony Stratton. And Geordie and I went to see this village last time we were over there. It had 4 houses, which I thought was a big village at that time. It had 4 houses and the farm either end. I can clearly remember both the farms. And one farm, I used to go to milk when I wanted some pocket money, and I'd get 6pence for a cow if I could stick through this one cow. All by hand. Yes, that was all by hand. And my father at that stage, he was bedridden, and I used to look after the vegetable garden and get veggies for us. And there were certainly no shops in that village, and I don't remember any in the next village, which was 2 or 3 miles away, because my mother used to walk into town, which was 9 miles away, and carry the shopping home. I can remember that, in a basket each hand.
Now, was this before you actually went to Dr. Bernardo's?
No, that was straight after.
Afterwards, yeah, so you did come out of Dr.
I came up to, and I must have gone home. Yeah, the records show this. The records show that my mother asked for me to go home because my father was ill. And that was when I was 12, and then he died when I was 12. Then straight after that, I went down the road for 2 or 3 miles, and I lodged with somebody. And because I was more than 2.5 miles from a school, the education board gave me a bike. And I used to bike to school, and it was in Shepton Manor, which is where the Doomsday Book was stored, I believe, through the war. That was 9 miles each way. And there again, on the way, sometimes I would milk a cow for 6 months from my pocket money. That the people that I lodged with were very, very nice, and he worked with the Ministry of Food in Shepton Manor. But Geraldine was a bit horrified the other day when I told her that they taught me to steal, which wasn't worth it. I used to have to go out and get the corn from the threshing machine when it had done the threshing, and then I had to collect enough corn that last their chooks for a whole year. And I used to steal from the farmers cabbages and carrots, which we used to eat. And the house that we lived in, that was a mill house, so they had the stream behind it, and then years before they'd driven the wheel to grind the barley or the wheat, and the river actually went underneath the house, and the house had, instead of concrete floor, a wooden floor, it had stone slabs. And we used to be able to lift one up, and that's where we used to tip the rubbish. And you could see the river straight down below it.
Polluting the street.
Oh, these shocking years. But then, I don't remember what happened after that, except when I was about 13, my mother got a job housekeeping for a rector at Crick near Rugby. It was 9 or 12, 13 miles from Rugby. And I went there then, and that wasn't too unpleasant at all. We never saw much of the rector. We sort of had our rooms, and he had his, and she would cook his meals and take them in. He was a single fella. But because we were in the rectory, well, it's called a rectory, I think, forgotten that. And anyway, I got tied up with the church quite a bit, and I used to have to, I was one of the 4 bell ringers to ring the bells for services. And if somebody died, I had to ring the bell, one for each year that they were alive, and one extra. I used to have to go to Sunday school, do all the things that you should do when your mother's housekeeping. I used to pump the organ to get the ear, I suppose, for the organist to play. And then I left school there, the village school, and went to work in Rugby itself. No, I went to work for Rugby School. It's a very well known.
How nice you'd be able to tell people you went to Rugby.
Yeah. And so I worked there as a gardener's boy, and that was for around some of the houses, like the library, the reading room, and that sort of thing. We never had anything to do with the close where the games were played, or the headmaster's house. We just did that. And then it was a requirement that I went to school one day each week. Must have been the law of the land. I went to what was called the Junior College of Technology and Arts, and it was for technical subjects. And while I was there, somebody suggested that I set a scholarship, and if I passed, I could go to the school full time. Then it wouldn't cost anything, 2 years. And I did this and sat and passed. But I don't know how long I stayed there. I think it might have only been a term or 2 before my mother shifted again. The school was interesting. The hours were 8:30 to 3:30. And I had a bike, and it was about 13 miles each way. It was only a 1-speed bike, and it had 3-speed ones. And then twice at night we had to go back for evening classes from 9 to 12. And that was a hilly ride. It was a bit like New Plymouth. It was uphill and down Dale, that one. Crick was just a little place. I took Geraldine back to see it, the house where I lodged, and it was built in 900 and something, 1100 years old. There was a beam across the room, and I'd have to duck down underneath this beam every time I walked across the the front room. That was quite funny. At Crick, there was a canal running through the village, and that's where I learned to swim, because everybody, right by a bridge, everybody would throw off all the bottles and that, so you couldn't dare put your feet down, so you just had to go once you got in the water, but it just had to get across to the other, over to the other side. And that was actually quite a pleasant time, and I sort of liked it around there. And then after that, when my mother moved, she moved to Sussex. And I would have then, I suppose, have been 16. And I worked on 2 farms. She had a boyfriend at that stage, and he owned several farms. So I worked on one of those. And I lodged with a couple of ladies, and they were Baptists, very, very strict. There was no cooking of meals on Sunday. We just had bread or whatever. And the meal was cooked on the Saturday, so we'd have cold on the Sunday. It was a semi-detached house, and next door was a wheelwright. And I used to go in there after work and work with this wood, making wheels and that sort of thing. I found it very, very fascinating. And to this day, I'm very, very fond of wood. But his house, the rent the ladies paid for their house was 2 and 6, like 25 cents. And then I did 2 farms there. Then when I was 17, I went to work for a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Painter. And you probably would relate to some of what I'm going to say now, because he owned 16 dairy cows. And I was in charge of these 16. I was the cowman. And used to go along with a tie, or a starched white collar, and a dust coat. And the son used to come and help milk. It was pen milking when I first went. And later on he brought a diesel. We used to have to start this up, and it was machine milking. And that was very, very interesting. I grew to like that job a lot. I was there for 3 years. And all the food for the dairy, each individual cow, we knew its weight. There was a system of measuring it and ascertaining its weight. And then all the food for maintenance and its milk production was all based on their milk production. And we used to have to mix up this maize and grains. And invariably everybody had their own secret recipe, I suppose. And that was all fed. The cows were brushed, and all the hair was clipped off their rear end so they wouldn't get dirty. The milk, we used to have a strainer for the milk to go through. But very rarely did you get anything in that strainer. It was very, very clean. Everything was clean. For about 6 months or 8 months or whatever, the herd was locked up inside, and we used to have to clean all the straw out every day. The winter was the pits, because everything was frozen. Even the dung and the straw in the cow shed was frozen. That was the pits. We'd pour hot water on it. Had a heater. We used to light that up, get the water hot, and then pour it on this dung to try and loosen it all up before we take it outside. Oh, that was cold. That was very interesting. The owner was very nice. He was a tenant, and he had 2 children, Peter and Pauline, and they were my age. And we used to get on quite well, and we'd go to the local dances and all that sort of thing. And that was actually a very enjoyable part of my life. He was very, very good. I called him governor, but others, it was always you had to be served or touch your fall up to them. And I found all that very, very hard to take, so I decided I would immigrate. And at that time, it only cost £10, like $20. And I was getting £7 a week, so it'd be 1.5 weeks' pay. You can travel to either Australia, New Zealand, Canada, or South Africa. And I figured that too much bother in South Africa. Canada, I figured, was too cold in the winter. And I'd like to have gone to Australia, but there was quite a stigma attached to Australians with the convict thing. And I settled on New Zealand, and not the least was the fact that there was the opportunity to get on because people could become sharemakers and owners, whereas in England I could never see how they could get on. The law would be tenants as far as I could see, all their lives. They hadn't got hope. And so I settled on that. That was in 1915. I was 20 then. So it was quite an eventful year because I got married in that year. I used to go up to London to Foyle's bookshop, and it was a large second-hand bookshop. There was only one book in there on New Zealand. I used to go to the New Zealand House. I think that was in the Haymarket, and listen to the people talking, and it was always, sheep to the acre, which was most impressive. Read newspapers, and decided that would be the place for me. And rather than pay the $10, I decided I would pay my own way, and on the boat. And that was, I think, about £250 from memory. And I worked it out once, it was about 36 weeks' pay. But that meant I was independent because the ones who came out for the £10, we were led to believe they had to not only stay in the same industry, but stay with the same employer. And I didn't know if I could handle that in a totally different country. But after I got here, I found that that wasn't necessary. As long as they'd stayed in the same industry, the fact they'd left their employer, nobody ever did anything about it, but all that sort of thing came later. So we set sail on this boat, the Tamara, from Southampton, and I had to bribe the shipping clerk because there was a waiting list of nearly a year to get on the boat, even if we were paying. And as we were just married, I didn't want to have to set up a home for a few months or whatever and then sell it all and come over here. So I bribed the shipping clerk, and I don't remember, it would have only been peanuts. And he got us on fairly quickly. And on the boat, we were on the boat deck, which was right at the top, and it had a wee window. It was much better than a porthole, and that could stay open day or night. And I tipped the steward so that he had a bath ready for me morning and night, and a tin bath, and that had fresh water. And after we bathed or showered or whatever in the hot, salty water, then we had this nice stuff in the tub to sluice over ourselves. So that was quite good. And I said, well, if he looked after me, then I'd give him another pound or whatever at the other end. And that was very good. Ship life was good. It took 6 weeks.
Where did you stop?
On the way, we stopped at Curacao and Panama. We went through the Panama and then Panama. And the only other stop was then off Pitcairn Islands, where the people rode out in their longboats, I think they were called, and they traded walking sticks.
And fruit too, didn't they? Fruit and pawpaw.
Don't know. I don't remember that. I can remember beads. There was a wooden boat and a wooden fish, some sort of fish. So it's really all I can remember of that. And then landed on Labour Day in Auckland. On the way over, shipboard life, where you would know, it's very, very intimate. You soon get to know everybody. And I was talking to a bloke, and I said how I was going to come over here and get a job. Oh, he said, I know somebody who'll give you a job. And he gave me the name and address of this person. And so I posted that at Panama, and when I got to Auckland, there was a letter, yes, this fellow would give me a job. So anyway, after we landed, that was Labour weekend, I think it was probably Friday or Saturday, some of the luggage was taken off the boat and the rest wasn't, because once the weekend started, the wharfies packed up. So we had to wait till Tuesday before we got the rest of our luggage. And I remember that weekend going to the pictures once, and in the row behind me there were two women singing, and And of course there's all these immigrants who come out and they get all the jobs. I've got about 2 inches high, I wanted to cringe under the seat. One of the earliest impressions of the shops was the lovely glass and china, the pretty china. We hadn't seen pretty china because there was the utility ware, I think it was called, through the war. Then all the good stuff was exported to the States after the war, so I'd never seen it. And I thought that was fascinating. My first restaurant meal over here was colossal. It was just steak and chips, and it filled up the plate. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Steak and chips. Because meat, as you would know, meat was very scarce in England through the war. So anyway, by Tuesday or whatever, I'd got my luggage and thought, oh well, I'll go and see this farmer outside Whangarei for my interview. So I go around the corner and ask a taxi to take me to Whangarei. Anyway, he soon enlightened me. Probably it was 81 miles or something like that. We went up in a little plane at the interview and decided to take the job. So the job, that job was £7, say $14, and there was a free house, milk, meat, and firewood. Yeah, but it was a real culture shock because there was only one paddock. I think it's 300-400 acres, hill and swamp. So the cows would be milked in the morning, they'd be let out. And there's a huge change from milking 16 and having somebody to help going along to 120, whatever it was.
And that was a big herd in those days.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it was 120 because I've been back to the farm since and seen the sons. But I found it just so crude, just putting the cups on and hardly any washing. I found it very, very crude. But no matter, I stayed with him for the season, then moved down to the Waikato.
Did you have milking machines then? Did you have Oh, you'd have to for a honey and something.
Yes, there were milking machines, but talking about machinery, in the last village where I was in England, there were, in 1950 now, there was one farmer had a car, nobody else did. I'd never seen a fridge or a washing machine. I didn't even know they existed until I came to New Zealand. And I'd never seen a TV, although I knew they existed. But I'd never seen one. But over here, they were just to a penny. Everybody had TVs, fridges, washing machines. And I think actually New Zealand in that respect was very, very well advanced, but I don't really know. It's just the impression I have. Anyway, I went to the Waikato, and that was in the winter. So I got a job in a timber yard, merchant, for the winter until I got a job on the farm in the spring. And he used to have timber, and also trucks would come in with coal. These were 10-ton trucks. We used to have to bag this stuff up. And I held the record for being the quickest one to bag it. For all the winter I was there anyway. There's 10 tons. You have to go like fury. 10 tons all that. Shovel away all off. And that was quite good. And then I went on the farm.
And you had a house provided there?
Yes, all the farms had houses. And I did that for a year. And then I decided to go shear milking, 50-50 shear milking. But that only lasted, I think it was in the second season when I got rheumatic fever and I had to go to bed for months. I wasn't allowed to move. So I went to Waihi Beach. And I don't know why I went to Waihi Beach, except that the rent was very, very low. And just stayed on my back in bed.
Was your wife working at this time?
No.
No accident compensation either.
Nobody had ever heard of that. What happened was the herd and everything was sold up, and I paid off what I owed, and then the balance the solicitor kept and just fed it out to me, just as and when I suppose we needed it. But no, there was no help from the government or anything like that. Well, I suppose it might have been if somebody was destitute. I just don't know what the position was. And then, when I got better, I worked in a dairy factory at Waihi for a season. That was a lovely experience, very, very hard work and very hot because it was so steamy. It was making cheese, sorry. And there was a lot of steam, a lot of heat. But I found it interesting because every day was different, because after a while I was given the job of reliever, so every day I had a different job. One day I might tip the milk into the vat. The next day I might do a part of processing of the cheese. Another day I'd be making, they were wooden boxes in those days, I'd be making those and nailing them up. And I found that that whole thing very, very interesting. And then, I don't know how it came about, but I decided I would go in for commercial pig farming, because that was more like the type of life that I was used to in England, where because the pigs were inside, all the meals and food was all weighed out and carefully blended. And I met somebody who had a pig farm, a private one, and he wanted to establish himself as the largest private pig farm in New Zealand. So I went there to manage that. That would be in the early 50s too. And we achieved what his aim. It was colossal. I think something like 900 sows, and that was a huge herd. And we brought people out from England to work it. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. While I was there, Massey College decided to have a course for pig keepers, so I went to that. That would be their first course for a week. I went to that because it was really quite technical, indoor and commercial pig keeping. I did that, and then worked on various other ones, including the Featherston Dairy Company. And then somebody from Taranaki wanted to get a piggery going using Osflow, which was the shavings and the sort of the dung from the broiler chicken sheds, and they'd done some experiments. So I came up to Taranaki. That was in 1968. 68 or 69. Came up to Taranaki to do that. Once again I got rheumatic fever, and that fouled me up a wee bit, but there was a social security benefit then. And so I got some assistance with that. And then, sorry?
Did you have any children by this time?
Yes. When we were in Warrior, yes, everybody was there, because Jordan was with me then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
before, when did you first have your first child? Was it when you were in Waihi?
In Whangarei.
Mm-hmm.
In Whangarei. So they would have started then. I can't remember how many was at Waihi. I think I would have had 4 or 5 by then at Waihi.
Mm-hmm. And the piggery that you had in Whangarei?
No, it was a dairy farm. Featherston, I was on a piggery, yeah.
Were the pigs all inside? Did they farrow outside?
Yeah, no, they farrowed inside, and they were kept in, all the young ones were kept in from that moment onwards. They never ever went out at all. But the sows, after they'd been weaned, they went outside. And that was cold and windy down in Featherston, very cold. But that was quite good.
And how long were you on Featherston?
3 years, I think, 2 or 3 years. And then we were with this farmer in Warrior, but that didn't work out because he was getting further and further into debt to one of the mill firms, and the mill firm asked me to go and see them one day, and they said, look, we're going to put this fella through the hoop, and if I were you, I'd try and get yourself a job. Anyway, I couldn't leave him. I didn't want to leave him. And anyway, they put him through, and he then became bankrupt. and we lost 3 months' wages out of that because he couldn't afford to pay. And so we moved into town, into New Plymouth, in that house we're in now. And that would be 1970, Christmas Eve 1970 we came into this house, and I left farming and went to work for a stamp dealer and stayed there for 10 years, just about 10 years with Len, and managed his stamp enterprise, and we built it up. And I used to travel.
This is a Taranaki Museum Oral History Program and is part of the Immigration Project. This is an interview with Mr. Jim Skilling at 1 Kitchener Terrace, New Plymouth, and today is the 13th of the 10th, 93. And we are recording on a Sanyo cassette recorder using an outside mic. The interviewer is Joy Peckham, and this is tape number 2. You were telling me you worked for
Len Jury as a stamp dealer. And I used to travel around the country buying for him. But I found that every time I went to Auckland and visited some of the stamp dealers up there, they had plenty of what we call stock stamp collections brought into them over the counter. They didn't have to go out buying it. It was oodles of it there. So we discussed this quite a few times, Len and I, and it was decided to establish, for Len to establish himself in Auckland and to phase out the New Plymouth operation. But I didn't want to leave New Plymouth. I was happy with New Plymouth. We liked it. We liked the house. Geraldine had a job. And to go to Auckland would have meant she'd have lost her job. We'd have been into a much higher mortgage again, and so on. We didn't want to shift. We liked it. So Len understood this and he accepted it. And all I did was to establish him up there for the first few months. I'd go up there for 1 week out of 4 and manage it, and he would do the other 3. And we did this for quite a few months, 3 months or whatever, 6, until he was really going. And then I decided to leave Len and gave him 3 months' notice, and I thought I would set up on my own at home. And so I told all the staff that I'd be leaving, that I was going to give Len 3 months, and suggested they all look for jobs, and they all got jobs, even if one girl got hers on the last day that I was there. But they did get jobs, and jobs were fairly difficult then. That was in 1981. Jobs were quite difficult, but they all got jobs, so I was very, very pleased. So then I set myself up at home doing the same sort of thing. I've been doing it ever since.
Was it a good move?
I've never regretted it. Joy, you mean going off on my own? I've never regretted it, because in the last 10 years, a lot of people haven't had a safe or secure job. A lot of them have faced redundancy. They're perhaps gone to work today and told not to come back tomorrow. I've never had that sort of experience. I'm thankful I haven't. It keeps me occupied and brings in a certain amount of income. Not a great deal, but there's a certain amount. And it keeps me occupied. Gives me something to do, and I'll in fact do it until I die. I'll never retire. I'll just treat it as a hobby. It keeps one woman employed for 5 mornings a week, so I think that's sort of quite good. And I actually enjoy doing this. We get to go to Australia once or twice a year as a result of the stamps in the latter years. We get round New Zealand a bit, and I'm very fond of travelling, and I like wining and dining, so that would be another hobby of mine, so to speak, so I can do that and class as a business. We went to Wellington last weekend. We did some business, and the business paid for the trip, but there's also quite a bit of pleasure in it. So yes, I look on it as a good move, and I'm very pleased. You know, we're doing that. And I don't think there's a great deal else to say. That looking back, I think I've had a very, very good life. Been very, very fortunate. My first wife, I was obviously very, very sad when broke up, but we're still good friends today. She comes to all of our family gatherings where she can. We always invite her. She invites us if we're over in Whakatane to go and see her. And we go there, have a cup of tea or whatever. We've got a daughter Susan, who's having her 40th birthday next week. We're going to that, and in the same motel complex is staying the first wife. So
what was her name, Jim?
Barbara. And we think that's good. We always include her. We like to show our children that, you know, you can be civilised. You don't have to sort of fight or be bitter. And I think they found it very hard at the start to see her included, but she and Geraldine get on very well together. They correspond. We ring her up if we want to find out how the children are doing over there, because we haven't heard from them, which, you know, really quite good to get her angle on it. So, you know,
how many children did you have by Barbara? Don't say you forgot.
I think 5. 5. 5 with Barbara. 4 with Thelma, the second wife. None with Geraldine for obvious reasons. But she brought 4. So that meant 13. Of that, there was usually 7 to 9 at home at any one time. At any one time, we had 5 at Spotswood once. That was a big hurdle, trying to sort out 5 uniforms and whatever. But one of those has died, so we've really got 12 children between the two of us. We've got 36 grandchildren, which confounds people. We went out for dinner on Saturday night with some Rotary people, because I used to be in Rotary, and they invited us out just to sort of keep in touch, I think, like they do every now and again. And they were standing with 36 grandchildren.
Oh dear, now tell me about the deep freezers. Now, you had a hobby with deep freezers.
Oh, well, I think we had about 52 cubic feet. We used to have 3 deep freezers. And I can remember one we bought, we agreed to buy over the telephone. I was in Auckland one day, and I said to Geraldine, well, the price of carrots is something like 4 cents a pound or whatever. And if we bought a freezer, we could pay for it in the first year by buying all these carrots when they're cheap. And we used to have the kids and I used to top and tail them and scrub them out on the lawn. And then we would cut them up in here and have a big pile up on the bench, like 40 or 50 pounds at a time. And then we would blanch them or whatever and process them, because having so many children, we had to feed them as cheaply as we could. And it was mainly stews. We used to make a lot of stews. We were fortunate neither Geraldine or I drank or smoked. And so it meant all of our money could go into the children. And we had big fridges too. We had a big double door fridge. We used to get fish, lemon fish, which was spotty shark, 400 or 500 pounds of that. We'd get maybe 50 pounds at a time over the weekends and process it all in the freezer. We didn't buy much meat. Meat was too dear. But we'd buy it as a beast. We never bought anything like a steak or something like that. We just buy it as a beast and take the good with the bad, the sausages and whatever. It was too dear for us. And rhubarb, on top of that, we used to freeze. We used to have containers for our money, and every week I put so much in each container for the milk and the meat and the power and that sort of thing. That was quite good till the containers started to go down, and we found out that 2 of the children were looking the containers, so we put a stop to that. In just the same way that later on, when we did have drink in the house, the lemonade used to taste queer, and I found out that the flies were watering it down. The level was the same, but they were watering it. Oh, dear me. And shopping, we would never dare go into a supermarket. We would send the list down with the children and put it under the door, and that was for 4 weeks. We'd do 4 weeks in advance, because being on a farm, we used a monthly sort of cycle. But in town you paid every week or fortnightly, so we did everything in 4-week cycles. And the children would put the list under the door, and the grocery person would deliver the list on the stuff at the end of the day after children got home from school on the table. And we would not go in a supermarket. We just wouldn't dare.
No,
you couldn't. You just didn't have any money to spare. You just couldn't. Except for Christmas time, Jordan, that was her treat. She'd go once a year and look around. And we had our present garden. Most of that was in veggie garden, and then we had some neighbours, and we took what they gave us their garden. We dug that up. We had that in veggies, and the railway reserve behind a friend of ours. We had a portion of the railway reserve. We used to dig that up year after year, and put in veggies, and the kids always had to help with the veggies before they could go off and play. But basically we were self-sustaining apart from just the odd fruit. And we would go to Hawke's Bay, usually Taranaki anniversary weekend, and come back with a car full of peaches and set to and bottle. But in later years we found out you could freeze them, so I think we just froze the peaches in the end, but until then everything was bottled. Beans we used to salt down. We had crocks for beans, they were all salted down. But it was quite good. I made some notes just before you came in about the price of one or two things. Perhaps I can let you have those, Joy. In the early 50s, when I landed milk, that was 6 cents a litre. Now it's about $1.20. Bread was 5 cents a loaf. Now it's about $1.90. Petrol was 7 cents a litre. Now it's 90. A 4-door car was $2,500. It would be sort of like $30,000 now. The average income was just over $1,000 a year. Now it's $400 to $500 a week. And a 3-bedroom house was $5,000, and now it'd be something like $80 to $90. And the population was 2.25 million, and I think the population has about 3.25 million. I think there was a national government when I came in. Certainly Holland. I can remember Holland in the very, very early 50s, but I can't remember if he was there when I actually came in or not. And we've still got a national government today. But Sydney Holland, I think, was sort of fairly well respected in his time, especially for quelling that Wharfie strike. So does that sort of fill in with anything? Have you got any other questions or anything like that you'd like to ask?
No, not really, Jim, except tell me about your children. Now, what have they with such a... Did you ever read the book Cheap About the Dozen?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I'm Mother McDonald, found a farm or whatever it is. About the children. Robert was the first one. And he came... we invited him and his family for Christmas. And he was about 30, I think. And he said that was... When he got here, he said, that's the first Christmas he'd been invited to since he'd left us. And by then he had 2 children, and I was staggered. How we could get out of touch. I found it extraordinarily hard to believe that. Anyway, that was Christmas, and then he came back in April or May with his family. They were on their way to Australia to settle. They decided to settle over there. And then he got leukemia soon after he got there, within weeks, and he died later that year. The next one, Brian, he's share milking at Wakatani. On a good year, he gets an enormous income. And he's milking something like 380 cows. And he's reasonably happy with his lot. He can't very well do much else because his income is so great. There's no way he could get another income like it. He'd like to leave the farm. I think he's had enough of getting up early in the morning.
Is he share milking?
Yeah, share milking, yeah. And he gets eczema badly, so his hands are always cracked in the winter. Terrible to look at. And Susan, she's married. That's the next one down. She's married to a share milker. And he's a very likeable sort of guy. Apart from his sharemogging, I think he spends most of his time bartering. He's always bartering fish for pigs, or his freezer's always full of all sorts of exotic things like venison and chooks and stuff. And they do hungies, and you've got over there's marvellous hungy. Everything under the sun's in this hungy. And they're doing one for Susan's birthday. Pheasants, quail, everything. And it's all by barter. He's an incredible chap, but I don't know about his farming ability, but he certainly keeps his larder full anyway. And then the next one, Dan, is Margaret. She had an unfortunate love affair when she was sort of 16 or 17. And she turned to religion and went to England and worked in the trade, what they call it, trade shops, no, trade aid shops, that's it. Worked in that, and then came back here and still does much the same thing now. Now she's met a boy now, but I don't think there's a lot of future in that, because he's separated with his second marriage and paying out money for their children, and I think he's sort of fairly hard up financially, but I'm not really sure. We've got another daughter in Hamilton. She's married to a very nice bloke, and he used to work for Telecom, and he was laid off. He was retained, and he now installs telephones under contract to them. And in his own words, it's like sitting on a gold mine. His income is enormous, and he needs 7 jobs from Telecom a day to give him a good living. His average is 10 or 11. He's thinking of buying a boat for 110,000. You know, it's incredible. So they're doing fairly well. And then out of Thelma's side, there's Michael. He was the only one who went right through university. They were all encouraged to go through university. He went through. To a large extent unaided. He used to work in the holidays and stay with us. Obviously we didn't charge board, so he could save his money, and we sent him money every month to keep him going too. We used to send him cakes until Jordan found out that the bloke was flogging him off. And he's done quite well. He went from Massey to the Rural Bank and became a manager after a while. The Rural Bank has been bought by the National Bank, as you would know, and it's now, well, it'll become fully merged on the 1st of January, and the name National Bank, Rural Bank, will be gone from New Zealand's history, which is, I think, is a shame. But the National Bank has decided to fly their own flag. When the merger took place, there were 26 branch managers for the Rural Bank, and only 8 of those were kept on. The rest were either given redundancy or else they were offered sort of sideways job. But Michael was one of the 8, and he was based in Palmerston North, so he's now taken over the National Bank, so he's actually running the 2 at the moment, and he spends most of his time with the National Bank as from the 1st of last month, 1st of September. So he's fairly secure. He's got a very nice lifestyle, a wife with 3 children, about 10 acres, and that's run as a business. And as a business, it supports his house and all of the interest on the mortgage. And he gets a nice little check each year from the taxman, because it's run as a business with a hope of making a profit, which is all the criteria. Another one, Gary, he served as his apprenticeship as a builder in New Plymouth, but his wife was an Auckland girl, so he's in South Auckland, and he's working for a chap, and they go along putting in aluminium windows in old houses. That's a little bit difficult work-wise. He's usually down to 4 days a week, but other than that, he's not doing too badly. But on the other hand, he married his wife when she was 16. She's never ever worked, because obviously she went straight from school to marriage. but they owned 2 cars. He built on 2 extra rooms onto his house. They're all fed well and clothed well. I think he's done very well. His brother Alan, he's in Thames, and he was working for a first block making company, and he established himself stocking up Gibraltar Port. He's now got 4 blokes working for him, and Thames is supposed to be a poor area. But he's got 4 blokes working for him now doing this Gibraltar stopping stuff. And then there's a girl, she's married to a meat inspector, and they've just moved from Tikawiti up to Dargaville. So we've sort of lost touch with those for the time being. But all in all, we're very, very lucky with our children, I think. And with the exception of Margaret, they've all got work. For my 60th birthday, most of them came here, and one of them, O'Brien from Wakatani, when we were sitting around here, and we were always wanting to sort of sit around here and sing, and when the kids were home, that's where the kitchen table was, and we would all sing. But anyway, he decided to go right round the room and ask if any of us had been on drugs, and it was quite interesting. Most of them had, and I think most of them had only done it once. And when they got to Geordie and me, I think they were a bit bemused, because no, we hadn't, nor did we know where to get this stuff from. But they'd all tried it once. That was quite interesting, because we were pleased that they were truthful, and didn't hide anything. So I think that basically the kids are alright. As far as we know, there's nobody on drugs anyway. And as far as we know, we know there's no alcoholics. Sure, they like their booze, and some of them like it more than others. But we're very lucky. We had two grandchildren in the last holidays, and we took those to Wellington, because I've been invited to a launch of some duck stamps at the Beehive, and so we thought we'd take them down, and they enjoyed it. And one girl of 16, her mother has said to us, well, there's no drink for that girl, you're not to give her drink. Well, anyway, Jodie wasn't too happy with me, because I said, well, I'm going to offer it to her, and I'll monitor her and see how she goes. And some nights she had some nights she didn't. It was made available to her, and the most she ever had was 2. She sorted herself out. And they wanted us to take photos of them in the unit on her 16th birthday, because we bought champagne for the evening meal for them to have. And she drank some. Darryl, the boy, he wasn't going to touch drink, and nor does he at home. But they wanted us to take photos, and so we took photos of them holding these bottles of bubbly beer up. But so far we haven't shown those photos to her mum yet. So all in all, joy, and we think we're very lucky, both with children and the grandkids. Yeah, very, very fortunate.
Tell me, where did you meet Jodie?
We met in Featherston. I was in Featherston, and Jodie was in Nainai, and her first husband went into hospital. They thought he had pneumonia. He went into hospital. He died about 4 days later with leukemia. And Jodie was carrying her youngest then, Tim. And then I met her when Tim was 4. He hadn't started school, so he was 4. And that was at a Solar Parents do. Solar Parents as an organisation, had just started in New Zealand then. The first group started in Wellington by Mary Bryant. And I went to a Solar Parent do over in the hut, which is where Geraldine was stationed. And I don't know if it was their first night, but we met fairly early on. And then we continued to meet over the next 2 or 3 years, I think it was, to see, while we met, Geraldine and I grew fond of each other, but we actually watched the reaction of the children. And when they were obviously getting on all right, then we decided that Geraldine would come as a housekeeper. because the children did seem to be getting all right, and they continued to do so.
Because there were quite a lot of children to get on with each other.
Yeah, but we were lucky because the youngest, there wasn't much difference in age between hers and my youngest. So in fact, they managed to sort of pair off to a large extent. And she was housekeeping for a year or two, and then we decided we would get married. We did everything proper. She had her own bed and I had mine. There were children in her room, children in mine. We didn't do anything to give them any sort of wrong ideas. And to this day, we like to think that we give guidelines. We never tell them anything. We just say, well, you know, we're here if you want any help. Just come and see us and we'll give you guidelines. We never tell them, even Tim, who's local. His mother gets pretty cross with him at times, but we don't tell him. We just leave him alone. We just give them guidelines. So that's how we met. So I would have met her just before Wahine Day. That was, when was it? 67, was it? Wahine, when that went down?
I can't remember the
It
day.
was certainly before. Well, I met her before decimal coinage. I can remember that. It would be about 67, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, last year they had something for Wahine, 25 years or so. They did something for last year. And while we were in Wellington here, we went to have a look at the memorial. There's a museum. That's right. We went to have a look at that. So that's where as sort of Geraldine came into the picture. And she started to teach when we were at Warrior. She went back to teaching then, and has stayed with it ever since. She's at Marfell now. I think this is about her 18th year up there, because she's now got mums coming along with children, and the mum's saying, "You taught me." So it's quite good in that respect. Quite good for her, I think. And I think she enjoys the job. It's a real challenge anyway.
It is a challenge. I think it's very stressful at times too, I should think.
It is in that particular area that she's in. There's a lot of poverty.
A lot of solo mums, aren't there?
There's a lot of solo mums and solo dads. Out of the unemployment, there's one good thing, I think, is that she now sees more dads. She sees more families at school. On Gala Day, there's mums and dads there, which she never ever used to saw before. Some dads take a lot of interest in their children, which they now can.
Time to do
they've got
it,
time to do.
Mm.
And things are tough, but in the last month, 4 ladies I know have left their job and got another job, and I don't know very many people, but 4 in the last month. I totted it up last night. There's 4 have got another job, and all doing jobs they like. And one gone into a new sort of job because she wanted to, and she's got a job. And I know it's very hard. I often wonder just how bad it is out there, but I don't really know. And there's one mum who Geraldine was watching the kid because he came to school with a piece of carrot. Wouldn't be as big as that on the bed on some days, and other days you'd have a bun. So Geraldine saw the mum, and mum said, "Well, we've just separated, and the house has been sold, but she hasn't got any money for it yet. And after she's paid all of her bills, she's got $40 for 2 weeks to feed her and 3 children on."
Mm-hmm.
So some of them, it's still very tough. But then that righted itself because a couple of days ago she came along and said, "Oh, she's got 200 for the food for this. She's got 200 now for the groceries for this time." So it's righted itself. And she was going to take the kids off to the supermarket for a treat, which I thought was good.
Mm-hmm. No, there must be a lot of poverty.
Oh, there is. A lot of it is real, and a lot is because of ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Rotary this year for their project, they're going to go to people's gardens and help the intermediate children do gardening. Rotary's provided the seed and plants, and they're going to try and get these kids going on vegetable growing. This is their project for this year that they're in. See if they can teach kids.
Actually, I don't think it's only intermediate, because my granddaughter are doing it in primary school.
At Franklin?
No, at Woodley.
Oh, right.
And it's Rotary doing it.
Right.
Which I think
Oh,
is a
that's
good
interesting.
idea.
Yeah. Perhaps I had the wrong impression because I just said to the person I was talking to, I said, well, what age group are you taking? He said intermediates. I just assumed that's the whole lot. Yeah, I think it's a good idea because in England, as you would know, through the war, there was the Dig for Victory campaign and we all had allotments. And somebody in Christchurch now has got a scheme going with allotments, I've read about. And I think it could be a good idea if they would help anyway, if they got the veggies growing. For argument's sake, I do the shopping for the meat and the fish in this family. And also the veggies through the week. And even yesterday, one shop had broccoli at 79 cents a head. New World was advertising theirs at $1.30 a head. There's a huge difference in the shops. And Woolworths Superstore, their meat is $3 to $4 a k dearer than in town. They're fishing.
This is a Taranaki Museum Oral History Program and is part of the Immigration Project. This is an interview with Mr. Jim Skilling at 1 Kitchener Terrace, New Plymouth. Today is the 30th, 10th, We are recording on a Sanya cassette recorder using an outside mic. The interviewer is Joy Peckham and this is tape number 3. Now, what were you saying, Jim? It was about the gardens of the Rotary.
Yes, that
clubs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, that's right, because they're going around helping people. If we relate it back to our own circumstances, when all the children were here, I mean, we just had to go gardening. But I saw nothing wrong in it because I was used to it. But for a lot of people today, it's probably very, very difficult. Very, very few of our family members do any bottling or preserving, and yet they were all brought up to it. They don't do it. Oddly enough, the one that has the biggest income, they do some, which is rather sort of quirk, I think. But they do some, and she's sort of gradually going to do more now that the children are helping, so she's involving kids. But I think it must help the budget anyway.
Well, it must do.
If you grow your own vegetables, apart from being much better, nutritionally wise, I would think, because there's a big difference between your own lettuce growing, let's say, from the garden and the salad than anything else, I think. So I think that's a good idea to get doing that. We've got a daughter in the South Island who barters quite a bit. If she grows rhubarb, she'll swap that for something else that somebody's got. They do quite a bit of bartering. I forgot to mention her too when we were talking about the children. That's Jane. Yes, she's at a place called Burke's Pass near Timaru, and they've got 2 children. And she and her partner, they're trying to establish a business with Clydesdales and carts and give Japanese or tourists a ride, and they do it for the day or overnight too. And they had 2 English people recently. These 2 people from England were in the catering business, and Tony took them along for 3 days, and they camped underneath Tony camped underneath the wagon, and the people slept in the wagon. And when they left, they gave Tony $100 tip. They thought it was marvellous. No telephone, no nothing, just out in the wilds. They really enjoyed it. Joanne's got 2 children, and they got fair hair and blue eyes. And the Japanese and the Taiwanese, they can't take their eyes off these children. They're mesmerised by them, I think. Joanne says they just stare and stare and stare. They've never seen anything like it.
And they do this quite often, do they?
They're trying to build it up. Joy, this is their third year now. Tony worked in the national park as a ranger, and he got a bit. I think he'd had enough because it got to the stage where he was always out on search and rescues, and he'd had enough. So he decided to give it a miss, and Joanne and he paired off. She was working in the office on the national park, and they paired off and went, and they couldn't get a job, so they were on the dole, and then they got fed up with that, and they decided that the first one of the two who got a job would get the job, and then the other one would mind the kids. So Joanne got the job, and Tony manages the children, and he's very good, very, very good with children, very good with cooking. But still it's hard because Joanne has to leave at 7 in the morning, she gets back at 6 at night, and the children are bathed and they're ready for bed. You know, it's a very hard life for them. And now they've become short of, well, they feel they're short of money, so Tony's going to go off to the Antarctic. He's been twice before for 6-week stints, and he helps the scientists. He's sort of their guide, make sure they don't fall down crevices and that sort of thing. And the last time he did it, 2 years ago, he got 18,000 US, which is a lot of money to bring. And then he hasn't spent any money, so he brings it all back, and that's quite a boost to them. So he's going to do that. But it's not all beer and skittles, because Joanne has got to pay, I think, something like, I forgot now, but many hundreds anyway. She's got to pay somebody mind the children. And she gets 26,000 a year. If you take off tax, it's 22. I think she budgets on 4 or 5 for the running of the car. She'd in fact be better off on the dole again, but because they don't want to do it. So they're trying to build up this business in the meantime, taking tourists. And they've got about 30 acres down there and a few sheep, and they cut the firewood and that sort of thing. So they're having a really good life, I think. They enjoy it. She'll be up at Christmas. And to help her with the money, we said we'll go to Wellington and pick her up and take her back again. And, you know, also just helps a little bit for her.
Now, let's talk about your hobbies. I know that you've mentioned 1 or 2. What are your other hobbies now?
Oh, reading and cooking, I think. When Geraldine broke her ankle 3 or 4 years ago, she was put in plaster, but it was not a walking plaster, so she couldn't put her foot on the ground, so she had to have crutches. And it meant she couldn't walk, she just had to sit on the chair most of the time. So I did the cooking because I had to, but I thoroughly enjoy it. So I do the cooking now through the week, Monday to Friday, and she does it at the weekends and in the holidays.
I think it's a jolly good idea, because after all, she's working all day.
This was why I kept on with it, with her agreement, because her working has altered a lot over the years. Once it was just sort of straight teaching, and she'd be home at 4 or 5:30. She very rarely leaves before 5 now. There's meetings 3 nights a week. One with the syndicate, which is their sort of immediate group. One with the whole lot. Then usually they bring somebody in, like somebody to talk on some aspect, music, blind or whatever. But because of the way the poverty or whatever has evolved, there's a lot more time spent now on evaluating children and doing reports. The abuse one has come in, so she has to record every time the kid appears to have been hit or beaten or has got marks on, and they have to build up a record. And any abnormal behaviour, there's one now who's kicking and hitting her, and she's got some horrible bruises. And she has to keep a record of all this. So there's a lot of record keeping now and helping. There's 3 children taken away from their parents yesterday by social welfare. But this doesn't happen overnight. It goes on with months and months of record keeping, consultations. They come to school and they have to see her. And invariably it's in the early stages at school because it's where it's picked up. So she's doing a lot of this, and a lot of sort of records and that type of thing for social welfare. So, like I said, I'll go and pick her up tonight because she wants to go to the library. That'll be 5. I've got to meet her at 5, so she works through to then. We leave her about 10 to 8 in the morning. So that's quite good. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and most of her holidays now are work. She's got this, because she was put in charge of getting computers, because they've got those at school, so she swots up those on the holidays, brings them home and tries out all the programs to see which programs are suitable for the kids before they're physically okay to buy them and that sort of thing. So most holidays she now works. I'm not saying it's wrong or it's sad, but the teaching has changed a lot. So the cooking for me is quite good, because we'll have a cup of coffee when she comes home. Then, well, even then it's 5:30, and then at least she can go and do something. But invariably she's bringing home schoolwork. So yeah, it's worked out very well, and I find it fascinating. She's asked why I don't specialise in the cooking. Well, the field is too big, because I do all sorts. I do Chinese, Japanese, Malaysian, French. I find the whole thing so fascinating. Every night is different.
You should have been a chef.
I know, it's fascinating. And she enjoys it. She's only ever complained once, and that was when she found out it was pasta twice in a row. Sometimes it's never sort of say yuck. But she actually enjoys it. And she said last night, she said, God, I do love these meals, because they're all totally different.
And you enjoy them much more too when you don't have to cook for yourself.
She doesn't have to cook. It's marvellous for her. But she actually likes it. It's not as she hates it. She quite enjoys the break. Plus, she can do it at any time. You know, if we have visitors, I wouldn't dream of cooking, because I take ages. I'll fiddle around and mess around it and have a drink as I go, and I take ages. But that doesn't matter, because we're not on a time slot. There's no children here. And I give her plenty of warning. I sort of say 20 minutes and 10 minutes. She's got plenty of warning, so she can adjust herself. And it really is a fascinating. It's a very fascinating subject, you know, with the fast cooking, the slow, the oven, the wok. But she herself has done all these sort of things, but she didn't branch out as much as I did. But she was quite an adventuresome girl. And whereas she uses Bisto, I never use Bisto, because I make my own sauces, and that too is interesting, making all the different sort of sauces. So basically that would be my hobby, I think, cooking and the garden. But the garden has got harder as we get older. It's sort of harder, and when she broke her ankle, I just physically couldn't do the stamps and the cooking in the garden as well. So we got somebody to mow the lawns, and we've kept with them ever since. And then now it means on Saturday or Sunday the garden is more of a... It's surprising what difference it makes. It's more of a fun thing, because we can now pot around with the weeds and that sort of thing. It's more of a fun thing, and we put more into grass and shrubs instead of the annuals, because the annuals were taking so much time. And we still spend as much time, but we can actually do less, or I can do far less in a given time. I don't do much at all compared with what I used to. It's just I can't physically achieve it, you know. I'm out there for an hour, and all I've weeded is a pretty little piece, but we like the garden. I've tried golf, but I've got a bad back, and that played havoc with the back, so that wasn't any
Geraldine plays golf.
So she plays, yes.
And enjoys it.
And it's good for her, because it gets her out of the classroom and away from the house and the stamps. It gets her away, you know.
And meets different people.
And meets people who are not related to school, although oddly enough her companion is the office lady from school. But they never discuss school. I suppose it's an unwritten thing. And this person is a very bright person, and they chat away and have quite a good time.
Good.
So
what clubs do you belong to? Do you belong to any...
I used to belong to Rotary. Rotary normally invites one person from one profession or trade. That's what they normally do. But like a lot of other clubs, they're short of members, so they can dream up or manufacture names for people. So there would be several school teachers for argument's sake, that they had one from primary, one from secondary, or one as an inspector. And I was in that for about 8 years. I enjoyed it, but I found it very, very time consuming. It's every Monday, 5 o'clock I had to leave here and get back at about 7. Very time consuming. That was every Monday. And then there would be two nights in the week, 2 nights in a month where there were committee meetings which I had to attend. I did the newsletter, and that was time consuming. It's fairly expensive. It would be about $1,000 a year because they have ladies' functions. You have to. It's an evening meal, so you pay for that. You pay when your partner goes. I found it fairly expensive. Mm-hmm. I found it a drain on the time, and after the share market crash, things were fairly hard for us because, you know, like a lot of people, the income suddenly went down there, and I thought, well, I just can't afford either the money on Rotary or the time, so I pulled out. And at this stage, I don't intend going back. The time is too much. I prefer to do my stamps or my cooking rather than this one. And then apart from that, we belong to the Philatelic Society, but that too is clash with my cooking. I'm going to do my cooking right. And then we belong. Oh, we did belong to a wine and food club, but we gave that a miss. No, the wine and food club we belonged to, that was good fun. That folded up and we joined a wine club, but we gave that a miss. That was too high powered for us. We like drinking it, we're not into sort of dissecting it and making a huge amount of notes by it and that sort of thing. It wasn't a fun thing. But one of the local wine merchants, he's got a thing going where people can go to tastings, and we go along to that, and we find that far more fun. And now he's started to do meals. We went to Burundi's the other night for an Italian meal, and that was quite good fun. There were 4 courses, but they were all entree-sized courses, and all Italian wines. And that was really a sort of a fun thing. That appeals to me far more than getting very serious into sorting out the various wines and trying to estimate or guess how much grape of this or that grape is in it and all the rest of it. That wasn't for us. So basically that's about the extent of my hobbies. They're fairly limited, but I enjoy what I do with them. And really the family is a hobby too, because we keep in touch. We endeavour to get round to see them all twice a year. That's what we try to do, apart from the South Island ones. We try to do those once, then if they're not coming up, we'll go down. This Christmas we were going to go down, but Joanne's going to come up now because of Tony being on the ice. She'll come up for a week, and that is quite time consuming to get round all those children, twice a year and see them.
And all the grandchildren.
Yeah, we keep in touch. Jordan sends off a birthday card to them all. We've got a list. That's quite good really, because she actually does them several months in advance and writes the date up on the top when they have to be posted, and I just keep an eye on put the stamp on the way it goes.
That's a hobby in itself.
Well, isn't it really? And you know what it's like, there's a lot sort of between September and Christmas. Well, there is in our family, I think there is in lots of families. There's a lot then, so she tries to do them in the holidays. That's all in advance.
Jim, can you remember anything about the war? How old were you when it started?
I was 9 when the war started, and I would have been in a foster home then from Dr. Bernardo's. And then at some point I must have gone back to Plymouth where my parents were, and every night when the sirens went, the 3 boys, we would sleep under the stairway. Sleep is a funny word for it actually, because we in fact had to sit up. You couldn't lie down. We just had to we used to sit until the siren had gone. In actual fact, I think we stayed there most of the night from memory. The war years, yeah, they stick in my mind a fair bit. Joy, what sticks in my mind would be the rationing, the gas masks that we always had to take, the gas mask drills at school. The glass was always taped up with that sellotape, wasn't it, or something like that to stop the shrapnel. Sleeping. In this house in New Plymouth, we slept under the stairs. After that, when I was in Somerset, when my father died, we would sleep under the kitchen table. So that was the 3 boys and my mother. My father was bedridden at this stage, and of course he just had to lay on his bed. He couldn't be shifted, which was always a bit of a worry. The war years had a lot of good in them. They weren't all bad. You'd get to know your neighbour because you'd go to the air raid shelter. There was shelters in the street built of brick. And then there was the Anderson shelter. Wasn't it the Anderson shelter in the garden? I don't remember much about those. One place I went to, we used to go in this Anderson shelter, but the ones on the street, they were quite good because we'd all sing. That they were quite good. The Americans were not thought of very, very well because they took so long to come into the war, and I can clearly remember them parading through the streets, and they got all the girlfriends because they had all the cigarettes and the nylon stockings and the goodies and a lot of money. I've forgotten how much money they had in relation to English soldiers, but it was untold more. So they weren't popular with us. The Fijians, I can remember them coming over because they were very tall with the curly hair. And I can remember the New Zealanders. The New Zealanders were highly regarded, especially for pilots, because a lot of them had been farmers, and it was thought that they were used to doing sort of 20 things at once. And my memory of it is that they were very, very popular, New Zealanders, and very well thought of. The food rationing, that sticks in my mind, but I don't think that was unpleasant. I mean, there was always enough to eat. It always seemed to have plenty. Air raids, that was a sort of fact of life. The searchlights at night, trying to find the planes.
And were you in Plymouth when it was badly bombed?
Yeah, we were literally bombed out of there. And that would be another feature of your night towards the end of the war. You'd hear all these planes when they go over to Germany. I think it was something like 1,000 planes at a time, or a night, or something like that. You'd go over.
Always the same noise.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The aircraft crashes, if they happened around us, we used to go and salvage bits and pieces from those. The perspex off the windshield, I remember, used to make things with that. The doodle bugs waiting for the blooming to stop.
And they were more frightening.
Oh yes, yeah, than anything else at all. Because I was young, from 9 to 14, the war finished when I was 14, so I didn't get called up. So my memories are not unpleasant. I'm not saying it was good, but I didn't have an unpleasant time. I used to like the gardening that we had to do at school on these allotments. The school had an allotment. We used to have to go and dig
for victory.
The veggies. The signs up everywhere. Is your journey really necessary? The blackouts, all that sort of thing.
Keep mum like dad was another one.
That's right. Yeah.
Is your journey really necessary?
You remember that up on all the railway stations. The blackout. But really, we got used to it. You sort of didn't think of much else, really. You just got used to it. So no, I really can't say it was too.
Well, listen, how old were you when you went to school?
5.
Mm. Yeah. And what was your first school you went to? Doesn't matter.
No, I just can't. I can't remember where. Generally, they weren't pleasant days, the school days.
You didn't like school?
No, I don't have very pleasant memories of school at all. I don't know why. I think a lot of things were forced on us. Certainly there was a lot of the strap and the cane. But it didn't seem to be a happy place. Nothing really sticks out in my mind as it was pleasant, except for in the latter years, sort of 12 or 13, they were better. It wasn't so much for the cane then. I think they were better. And when I went to that rugby school of technology and arts, that was neat because they were technical subjects too, and I could relate more to those two.
So what are the subjects you took?
There would be drawing, like technical drawing, such as houses or bridges, that sort of drawing things. Well, I suppose they'd call it engineering, draftsmanship, that sort of thing. There was that, art and maths. There weren't very many subjects at all. Music didn't come into it, whereas music is quite a common one now. Geraldine takes music.
And you enjoy music too, don't you?
I enjoy listening to it. Yeah, I really do. That's one big regret I've got, that I can't play the piano. But we've still kept ours when the children come home. I can clearly remember, of course, the end of the war with Europe and the end of the war with Japan. I imagine everybody can do that. With the end of the Japanese war, I was in Hereford, and we were in a camp. It was to do with religion. We were in a camp for a week or two when that happened, and we biked into Hereford itself for that. That was terrific. And of course, after Europe, well, that was all buzz, wasn't it? And the bells and singing and everything like that. That was really quite a night, that one.
As a child, did you get a coronation? What was the big
coronation mug? Yes. I've still got that to this day. It's cracked, but I've kept that. And in fact, I'm fond of. I believe in royalty. I'm not saying I'm happy with what's happening as individuals, but I believe in royalty, and we've in fact added quite a few to that original mug. Mm-hmm. We've got quite a few different ones. Yes, we had that. I've got no idea we were given a medal or something to do with royalty, but I can't think what the devil that was all about. About now. Food rationing. That was all right. I mean, you got by. But it was a totally different scene. For argument's sake, during the war with bread and butter and jam, we'd only have either butter or jam. You never had both. I mean, and in fact, the two spinster ladies who were Baptists that I boarded with, they used to put the butter on my bread and then they'd scrape it off again. And I reckon at the end of the session, they always had more than they started off with, because they'd pick up all the crumbs, I think, and they'd put it back in the jar. Or they were quite as. But there were shortages, but I think we got by. I think really that there was a lot of bitterness with the Americans. That sticks in my mind quite firmly, because they had so much. And the English people sort of didn't have very much at all. I can't sort of think much else about the war years.
Jim, what about Geraldine's children? Now, she had, how many did she have before she married you?
Geraldine had 4. Geraldine had 4. Her husband died when she was carrying the 4th, Tim. Tim lives in Bell Block, and he's married with 3 children. He's a loco driver, and it just shows how technology has gone on. On Sunday, he drove a train down to Keene to get some butter, and because it was a big load, he had to take three engines, but they're coupled up and connected up electronically, so you only had one driver, whereas years ago you'd have had 3 drivers and 3 firemen, and this is some of the problem I think we've got today with the labour situation. But Tim's quite happy, and he enjoys his work, and he doesn't like working at the weekends, which is why he stays in New Plymouth. He won't travel and go to Auckland or Wellington because he doesn't want to work at weekends. And then there's the next one up. That's Warren. Warren went from here to England, and I think he'll stay now. married to an English girl. He took her to Malta once to try and get her used to travelling so that she could come over here. That was as far as she'd ever. That's the first time she'd ever been out of the village. This is today's age. She'd never been out of the village. And so he's married to Gillian with two children. And when he rings up, he's got an extraordinary broad accent. You'd think he'd been there all his life. And he works in I'll call it a low-profile prison, and he takes the inmates for gardening and sort of home handyman stuff. And if they're naughty, well, of course, they don't get to go out there again, so they're usually quite good, I think. He's very fortunate. They did a house up for the governor with 5 bedrooms and underfloor heating, double glazing, and the governor didn't want to move in, so Warren got that house. And the rent is 50p a week, not $1 a week. And his mother wants to know why he won't come home to New Zealand. And he's got a big garden. Jordan did a video of all the family over a month, and we sent that over to him and suggested he borrow a video camera, and he did one on his family in the garden and that, which came over here, and we shunted it all around the children. So that was quite good, because that lets the New Zealander see how he's living. And he was very naughty. His wife is not a small girl, and when she was bending down doing something, he took a large amount of courage on her rear end. Very naughty, much to the amusement of some of the family members. And there was untold swearing in it, so we sort of had to say to all the family members, well,